Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to Lurd Investigates. I'm the Lurd, and today we're going to be talking about the cold case of Sharon Gill from Punta Gorda, Florida. If you like this video or dislike this video, let me know by hitting the like or dislike button, and be sure to let me know in the comments what you think about this case. It's definitely a confusing case. When I first saw a recent article about it, I thought, well, there's probably not that much information for me to do anything about, like nothing for me to really report on. But once I started digging, I felt like, oh, okay, well, this is getting a little bit crazy. So it seemed like a really good case for us to cover today. Gertie is with us. Say hi, Gert. Oh, Gert. But before we jump in, I just wanted to say I hope you all are feeling well and are staying healthy. And if you're essential during the coronavirus, thank you so much for all of your work and your selflessness. And I really hope you're getting hazard pay. I have been really anxious, and I've been trying to stay calm. So today I'm drinking calm chamomile tea, ta-da, and I have been coloring, because I felt like maybe this might help me stay calm. I also have been sleeping a lot to try to catch up on sleep because I wasn't feeling very well. So, also let me know what you guys are doing just to, stay chill as possible while you feel like the world is ending. Is anyone else having some kind of crazy dreams? Because I am too. I had a dream where I was like living out of my car and the only fruit Publix had left was squash. I don't know. And I was like yelling in the Publix. Anyway. So, let's get into it. Sharon Gill was a preacher's wife, and she had a daughter named Krista, and they lived in Detroit, and her husband, and they actually bought a house in Punta Gorda, Florida, back in 1989 or 1990, because they were all moving down here. The home was a really nice home, off of Rampart Blvd in Punta Gorda, Florida, and it was built in 1989. It was humongous, 9,583 square feet. It was in a community where they have, HOAs and everything like that. It wasn't much of an HOA fee, a $10 a month HOA fee. And I mean, as you can see here, it looks like a beautiful home. Certainly one that I would feel very blessed to own, me and my little apartment. So everything was good for them. I mean, they were moving to Florida. Percy was going to join Sharon and her daughter Krista later on, to move down. But on March 21st, 1990, Sharon Gill, who was 42 at the time, was stabbed to death in her home in the Deep Creek area of Punta Gorda on the Rampart Blvd. Unfortunately, it was her daughter Krista who found her, and I believe she was a teenager at that time. So I'm sure it was incredibly traumatic.
Trying to bring Sharon Marie Gill's killer to justice as investigators in Florida shifting part of their focus here to Detroit.
The 42-year-old was killed in her home, her daughter making the horrifying discovery.
Only on 7, Alan Campbell spoke with her daughter and Florida investigators about the cold case connection. Alan.
Pastor Percy Gill worked here at Word of Faith Church in Southfield the day his wife was brutally murdered. Now his daughter Krista and authorities in Florida want to find her murderer and close this cold case once and for all.
I'm a child finding her mom brutally murdered.
It was the afternoon of March 21st, 1990. Then 18-year-old Krista Gill returned home from school and found the front door to the home unlocked.
I saw blood on the floor, instantly thought it was one of our dogs that were hurt. So I called the dogs turned my head to the left towards my mom and dad's bedroom and called my mom, and that's when I noticed blood everywhere.
Investigators say she'd been stabbed 38 times and was brutally raped. Pastor Gill was in his last week working as associate pastor at the Word of Faith Church in Southfield.
His wife was murdered during the day inside their home, no sign of forced entry.
Investigators did arrest a neighbor for Sharon's murder, but was eventually released because there wasn't enough evidence.
To think that this person is walking around free, if they're still alive.
The Charlotte County Sheriff's Office believes someone in Detroit and the surrounding area has information in this case.
Try to remember back to that time. I believe, again, there are people there that have information that will help us. I believe they are still in that area, and I believe they actually want to try to help us.
For Krista, it's been a dark and long 29 years since her mother was murdered. She's praying and hoping someone who knows something will come forward with information to bring her mother's killer to justice.
I want this to come to rest. I want to be able to say that this cold case of my mom is finally closed.
If you have any information, call Crime Stoppers. That number, 1-800-SPEAK-UP. Reporting in Southfield, Alan Campbell, 7 Action News.
And I did read an article that said she had been stabbed 30-some times and also raped. So it was a very tough, horrible, horrendous death. And from everything that I've seen, she was, a wonderful lady, a woman of God. Their family had everything going for them. So it's just really unfortunate. So after her daughter found her, a day or two later, someone had reported seeing a suspicious person near her house. A couple of the articles say that at the time that this happened, she was on the phone talking with her travel agent, making travel plans. Someone knocked at the door and she said she had to go. And so when Krista came home, the door was actually partially ajar in the home. So the reason why I found this case is because right now investigators are still looking into her death and are trying to catch the person responsible for this. And they would like to talk to that tipster who back in 1990, a couple days later after her March 21st murder, they reported seeing a suspicious person near her house. So if you were there in Punta Gorda, in that neighborhood of Deep Creek, please reach out to the Charlotte County Sheriff's Department, and I will link that information in the below. So at one point there was a man who was suspected. They had a Charlotte County Sheriff's Office had a list of about 20 suspects, and they were in the process of narrowing this down. There was a young man who had just moved to the area from the Bedford, Massachusetts, named Shawn. And he had moved down and he was living at his grandmother's house and at the time, and the grandmother's house was in that neighborhood. And Shawn had a bit of a record. So far, I have been unable to get his records from Massachusetts. I've sent a request for them, so if anything, when I get the records, I can do an update. But I do have his Florida records, which are not good. He has, between 2000 and 2003, he has 7 arrests on record, and some of these arrests, driving without a license. He says he is a tree surgeon, and I believe I read somewhere that he was self-employed, and he refuses to release his date of birth. So after looking into Shawn, I found something extremely interesting about Shawn and his family. So as you know, Shawn and his family, they came from New England. I believe it was Massachusetts. And his brother has actually been convicted of a murder up in Massachusetts. So his brother's name is Scott, and Scott was accused of beating, raping, and stabbing a 14-year-old Punta Gorda girl and leaving her in the woods to die. And he was also suspected in a 1993 Port Charlotte murder. His brother went by the name Scott, but it turns out his name is Christopher Scott. So it says Christopher Scott, who was 22 at the time of this report, February 3rd, 1998. Christopher Scott Malsky of Punta Gorda was a suspect in the murder of the 79-year-old Pauline Farrington, according to sources at the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office. This poor woman was raped and stabbed numerous times in her Port Charlotte home in July of 1993. Detectives received reports that a young man resembling Malsky, who again, this is Christopher Malsky, not Shawn Malsky, it's his brother, was seen driving Farrington's stolen car in the days after her murder, but Malsky was never charged. More recently, in 1998, he was accused of abducting a 14-year-old girl named Jennifer, and he took her to a remote location in Northport, Florida, and Jennifer went to the cops and said he raped her, clubbed her over the head with a baseball bat, and stabbed her nearly 30 times and then left her to die. Psychopath. So they located Shawn's brother in Delaware and they arrested him for sexual battery and attempted murder of this girl, Jennifer. Back in 1998, they set his bail at $1 million, which is insane because that was a long time ago. So if he did that now, it probably would have been more than that, probably at least $3 million. Jennifer's mother was actually quoted saying that Scott, or Christopher Scott, had never acted like he would hurt anybody. He's a damn good actor. He acted like he was all concerned while Jennifer was missing. Nothing in his voice made him sound like he did it. And I think, just a side note before we move on from these updates here, just a side note, I have been listening to Chris Watts' interviews for the last couple days, which is probably one of the reasons why I'm feeling super funky, because this is a common theme that we see in men and in some women too, but recently in the cases that I've been looking into with men, where the people that know the men say, I would have never expected them to do this. They seem so normal. In Chris Watts' case, I'm getting chills. Oh. I can't even say his name without feeling sick. It looked like he really loved his family, though he seemed, not that happy with Shanann towards the end. Of course, no reason to kill her. Anyway, it just kind of confirms the thought of, do we really know anyone? It wigs me out. It really wigs me out. So, eventually what happened with Jennifer is after he had beaten her and savagely raped her and stabbed her 30 times, this girl is so strong. Like, my God. She got up and she was staggering off of a road in Northport at about 6:30 that night, and she was hiding in the bushes for 4 days with those injuries. And at the time, she had been blind from the bludgeoning. And so she just crawled toward traffic. She didn't know where she was going. And her mother was noted saying that Jennifer was very angry at him. Well, she probably should be more than angry, but I can understand like feeling betrayed by someone who you think is your friend or something. It never told me in this article what the relationship between Jennifer and Scott was, so I don't know. Jennifer ended up having surgery for her shattered cheek, and she was able to recover, thank God. So as you can see, this family kind of has some problems. I don't know what their upbringing was, but at some point they were able to arrest Shawn for the murder of Sharon Gill. Unfortunately, in 1995, the charges were dropped because they were unable to discredit his alibi that he was running errands at the time. So this is something I'm not sure I understand, because later on I saw an article that said they had discredited his alibi. So one, I want to know, what is the alibi? I guess he said he was running errands at the time. Where did he go? In 1995, actually in 1990, did they have surveillance cameras? So I found an article that said security cameras went mainstream between the years of 1972 to 1989. So there is a chance that there is some surveillance footage from Shawn's errands. So I would also be interested to see if there was a way to get a hold of this, if investigators already got a hold of this, whether or not his alibi was solid or not. But it brings up some interesting questions, because I believe at the time Scott was living with his brother at his grandma's house in the same neighborhood as the Gill's home in Punta Gorda. So Scott's MO, stabbing and raping Jennifer, is the same MO as what happened to Sharon. God rest her soul. So it makes me wonder if perhaps it was not Shawn and it was his brother Scott, or sometimes referred to as Christopher Scott. In the same article that explains the history of Christopher Scott and kind of goes through the family and gives us this history, they wonder, of course, all of this is speculation, none of it is truth. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty of that specific crime. However, the New England Cold Cases website, which is really fantastic, says that during this similar time period prior and during the 1990s, there were many girls that went missing in the New England area, and all of them had strawberry blonde hair. And the girls were between the ages of 14 and 17, and they went missing between 1979 and 1991. And they're still missing to this day. The question is, are these crimes from Florida, between Florida and New England, somehow connected? Did the Malsky brothers go back and forth between Massachusetts and Florida? And could the two of them been responsible for some of these girls, all of these girls, because the MO was eerily similar, though some of these details about the murders of the girls have not been released to maintain some dignity for the victim, or rather, victims. And this was never solved. And so again, we're talking about the Sharon Gill case, but we're trying to understand if there's somehow a connection here. It almost seems to be sort of lighting the way. Deanna, her name was Deanna, and she was 17 years old, and she was visiting some of her friends on March 29th, 1995 in the Somerville, Massachusetts area, and was allegedly walking halfway home, but her boyfriend said she never arrived home. She was found the next day in Somerville, less than a block from her home. She was lying on her back, mostly undressed, and had been strangled. So that seems to be the only New England girl case where they released the MO. Strangling doesn't really fit the same MO as the Sharon Gill murder. Sharon's death was on March 21st, 1990. Deanna, her murder was on March 29th in 1995. 5 years later. So it's interesting to me that these murders are happening within months. One was in June, one was in July. Another in June, another in July. So, were they perhaps traveling in the months of March through July for something, going back and forth between family and making it more difficult for police to track where the murders were hitting because of the travel that they were doing? Who knows? I guess it's a possibility. So let's look at the church that Percy Gill was working at the time of this death. This is the Word of Faith Church, and I was doing some digging about this church, and it's interesting to me because it seems that at one point it closed down and was like raided and ruined. I mean, I think the building had already been condemned, but it looks like things had been stolen and broken within the church, and eventually the church was set on fire. The Word of Faith Christian Center, it was built in 1927 by the Salvation Army and was later used as a rental hall by Oakens Ventures. Amenities included a chapel, banquet halls, offices, and a kitchen. So was this another church that they used? Because you can see here Word of Faith International Christian Center, and one of the media clips is of a reporter standing in front of this Word of Faith sign. So perhaps this was another building around Detroit. But seeing the damage made me wonder, did somebody have some type of problem with this church? Was there a problem with Percy? Was there someone that maybe wanted to get back at him for something? Why did they move to Florida? We don't really know that. It sort of makes me wonder if there was some sort of crime that was done to get back or make some type of statement, either Percy or the Word of Faith Church. Now, I tried to find information on Percy and I was unable to. So he has everything pretty much locked down. I don't think he's a suspicious person. I just wonder if there were people that were angry at him or people that had disagreements about what the church was doing and why they moved from Detroit, and if there was some sort of problem and that's why they moved. Going back to Shawn, I find it interesting that he was arrested and let go. Now, I found information about Shawn's defense. He had listed this on his website, the Law Office of Paul D. Sullivan. And he has a page here that says, "Who are my clients?" And he says, "I have represented a wide variety of clients in my time," and starts talking about Fortune 500 companies and how he's represented some of the most notorious alleged killers in Florida history. Not something that you want to be that proud of, but I guess that's your job. So, and what it says about Shawn's defense for this, I'm going to read it word for word. "I am particularly proud of my representation of a young man falsely accused of the gruesome stabbing death of a woman in Charlotte County. My client, Shawn Malsky, was a neighbor of the slain woman. After a year of trying to find the killer, the detectives arrested Shawn for the crime. Shawn spent over 2 years in jail, represented by a public defender. Eventually, I was appointed by the judge to take over Shawn's case from the public defender. Within a few short months, I developed the facts which conclusively proved that Shawn was out of the county at the time of the killing and was completely innocent. As the day of the trial approached, the prosecutors put an alibi witnesses on a lie detector and took other steps to confirm the facts that I had discovered about Shawn's defense. The prosecutors became convinced that Shawn had not killed the victim, and he was exonerated and released from jail. The terrible crime is still unsolved." And then he notes where you can find the case files, which is not really true, and other articles, and he links that out. I did reach out to the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office and had an email exchange with Mike Gandy, and I had asked if there were any records that could be shared, but at this time, since the case is still open, even though it's considered a cold case, they are not releasing anything at this time other than what we see in the news. So, back to Charlotte County and what they're releasing. They have asked that the tipster that said there was a suspicious looking man come forward, contact the Collier County Sheriff's Office because they have additional questions for them because they think that person would be able to hopefully identify or give them better information about what happened in the case. Then, so that was in April, and then in October of 2019, they released a statement that said they have a new DNA profile in the Sharon Gill cold case. So this is promising. So, according to the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office, new tests using DNA technology have developed a new DNA profile in the case. Love DNA. Additional testing is required to determine how this new DNA profile may assist in solving the case. So, if I may, all of us in the true crime community know how the Golden State Killer was caught. So, let's pray that they can run this DNA through a database like the GEDmatch database and at least locate relatives of this person, because once they do that, they can start narrowing down who may have done this. So good on these investigators for safeguarding the evidence and keeping it. DNA has come a long way since 1990, so I am really excited at this prospect of potentially using the DNA to solve the case. So this same October article says that the investigation has moved away from previous suspect Shawn Malsky, who we've talked about his brother as well. He was originally arrested for this crime, but then the charges were dropped, as we talked about. Detectives say that until a person has been charged and convicted, all potential suspects remain potential suspects. So basically, they're not crossing anyone off their list until they probably run this DNA and figure out what's going on with that and who potentially find a match for that. So if you were the tipster or you were living in this Deep Creek area in Punta Gorda and you saw something strange on March 21st, or if you were the original tipster a couple days later, so that would have been between March 22nd, maybe March 24th in 1990, they're asking that you contact the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office personally because they have more questions that they want to ask you. So if you have information, I'll put the information in the description, but please call 941-575-5361. If it's after hours, you can call 941-639-2101. You can also reach them at coldcase@ccsofl.net. But if you are the tipster, I would ask that you just literally pick up the phone and call Mike Gandy, okay? Because we're hot on the trail and they're gonna find who did this, and I just feel so terribly sad thinking about Sharon's final moments. I'm actually getting chest pains right now thinking of it. And just the terror that she must have experienced being stabbed 38 times and being raped. I can't even imagine. I just hope she's in a happier place now and that investigators are getting closer to figuring out what happened. I pray that we figure out this DNA profile and then it's a slam dunk on who did it. Her daughter, Krista, needs closure. Her husband, Percy, needs closure. They need to know what happened. They need to know this horrible person is put behind bars and won't be hurting anyone else so that they can move on. I mean, it's gone on for long enough, for 30 years. So it's crazy when I think of 1990, so I'm a 91 baby, but when I think of 1990, it still seems like 10 years ago, but it was 30 years ago. So it's really time, and I have to say thank you to Charlotte County Sheriff's Office for continuing to work on this case. Thank you to Web Sleuths, who I also found some different information on about this case. Fox 4, you've published a lot of articles, and so I thank you for that, and the same with NBC2. Thank you. So, what do you guys think? Could this have been just some random person that knocked on the door and just hurt her. It seems to me like they would have been following her a little bit and knowing who she was, and knowing maybe that there wasn't a man living in the home. Could it have been one of the Malsky brothers? Potentially. Could it have been somebody who had a grudge against the family in Detroit, or had a problem with the church and the teachings? Let me know what you think in the comments. Please, please, please share this out. No one is really talking about this case online, which is why I wanted to do a video to try to share it out. Especially if you live in the Southwest Florida area or have connections in the Southwest Florida area. Please share this so that we can help spread the word and hopefully find the tipster that Charlotte County Sheriff is looking for, and hopefully get Sharon and her family justice. So thanks for watching Learn Investigates. Please stay safe and healthy. Share kindness, not coronavirus germs, and take care of yourselves. See you next time.